My name is Marin, 28. The cafeteria lights hummed like tired bees, and the soup on my tray had formed a skin, as if time here learned to wait without me. I kept the paper cup close to my lips just to feel something warm. Upstairs, machines were breathing in rhythm for a person who couldn't. Down here, the clock hands moved like they were pushing through syrup. A month earlier, I had typed, "We're in the newborn intensive care unit. Please pray," into the family group chat with a thumb that wouldn't stop shaking. Blue ticks bloomed under my message like tiny promises. Then my aunt answered with beach photos, neon cocktails, a caption about Miami sunsets, a boomerang of her laughing, hair salted by the ocean. Hearts stacked under her post, little red balloons floating up the screen. Under mine, nothing but quiet. That night, I tucked the phone under my pillow, like apology I didn't know how to make. No one visited. Not my cousins who lived 20 minutes away. Not the uncle who said I was like a daughter. Not my mother who taught me that family meant first. The word shrank in my mouth each day until it tasted like aspirin. The phone in my hand caught the cafeteria light, and a thin, diagonal crack across the glass flashed white. My small, private thunderbolt. It had appeared the week we learned our daughter might need help to breathe a little longer. I told myself I'd fix it when she was home. Until then, it was a line I carried everywhere. A reminder that even when things still work, they can split. I swiped through the group thread again. Vacation photos, clinking glasses, wish you were here. Someone typed, next year for sure, with a winking face. I closed my eyes and heard the NICU monitor beeps in my head, steady and stubborn. I didn't need anyone to say the right thing, just to sit in a chair and be wrong with me. My phone buzzed hard enough to rattle the cup. When I turned it over, the lock screen showed a number that didn't make sense until it did. 74 missed calls. My brother's name sat on top like a flare. His text stacked beneath. Answer. This is bad. The cafeteria's refrigerator moaned on cue. I stared at the cracked glass and saw my face divided by a lightning vein. I thought of the message I sent a month ago, the echo of my own plea hanging in the room like steam. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Tell me in the comments, because I'm learning where mine begins. I pressed the green circle and lifted the phone to my ear, but before a single word arrived, the realization did. Sometimes the emergency isn't upstairs. It's the story you stop telling yourself about who'll come. Marin, listen, don't hang up. My brother's voice bled through static, thin but urgent. He had the kind of tone people only use when the world is tipping. It's not about you, it's about her. You need to hear me out. I wanted to ask which her, our mother? My aunt with the cocktail glass? His girlfriend who never learned my daughter's name? But my throat refused. I just pressed the phone tighter until the cracked glass dug into my cheek. You don't know what's happening, he rushed on. They thought you'd never answer. That's why, his voice broke, and for a breath it was just the echo of clattering trays in the cafeteria. Please come home. The word home lodged in me like a shard. Upstairs, home was a plastic crib behind a wall of glass, wires clinging to a body barely the size of my arm. But he meant the house I left, the house that smelled of lemon polish and arguments buried under silence. I didn't reply. Silence, after all, had become my sharpest answer. Marin, he tried again softer. If you don't come tonight, it might be too late. Too late for what? He didn't say. Maybe he couldn't. I hung up before the shape of his fear could reach me fully. The cafeteria emptied around me until only the janitor was left, dragging a mop in long sighs across the tiles. My soup had cooled to a rubbery sheet, the spoon sinking in slow motion. I stared at it and thought about how food changes when untouched. Families too. I pulled my sweater tighter, walked toward the elevator, then stopped. My cracked phone buzzed again, a message this time. From my brother. She knows about the will, about your daughter, and she's already moving. The words sat jagged on the screen. My reflection bent over them, split in two by the fracture across the glass. I whispered into the still air, moving where, as if the phone might answer. But it only vibrated once more with his follow-up. You'll understand when you get here. Just hurry. Upstairs, the NICU monitors pulsed their mechanical lullabies. I stood frozen between two floors, two homes, two versions of myself. One tethered to a fragile rhythm in a glass crib. The other pulled back into a family that had already proven silence was louder than prayer. The elevator chimed open like question. I wanted to scream. Instead, I slipped my phone into my pocket, silence pouring out of me like a second skin. The cracked glass pressed against my thigh with every step, reminding me, sometimes the fracture is the only honest thing left. The hallway outside the NICU was painted a hopeful yellow, though at night it looked more like parchment, faded, tired. I leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of my phone in my pocket, heavier than any stone. She knows about the will. My brother's words throbbed like a pulse I couldn't slow down. The will. My aunt had always called it a formality, a thing my grandmother scribbled before her lungs gave out. But in whispered corners, I had heard another version, that my daughter, born early and fragile, was written into it as though she were a promise for tomorrow. I had dismissed it as gossip. My family loved gossip more than truth. A nurse passed, pushing enforced stand, her shoes squeaking like cautious mice. She nodded at me gently, as if she knew I was standing at a crossroad far bigger than these linoleum floors. I pulled the phone back out. The crack across its glass seemed sharper under the fluorescent light. Another message blinked in. Don't trust Aunt Lila. She's already with Mom. I laughed, but it came out hollow, almost a cough. Aunt Lila, the one who sent Margarita photos instead of prayers, sitting with Mom, the woman who hadn't stepped foot in this hospital since the birth? My family had never been united in kindness, but in schemes. Oh, they could braid themselves together perfectly. Through the NICU window, I could see her, my daughter, breathing in shallow puffs, a knitted hat sliding down one ear. The machines blinked green approval for each breath. I touched the glass lightly, whispering, You're the only one who doesn't owe me an explanation. Behind me, the elevator dinged. Two voices carried down the hall, laughing, careless. For one fragile heartbeat, I thought they had come for me. But no! Just visitors leaving another room, perfume trailing like denial. I sank into the chair outside, scrolling back to the beginning of the group thread. My plea, please pray, still sat there like a forgotten candle. Around it, clinking glasses, sand between toes, captions of freedom. Now, these same people were tangled in my brother's warning about wills and moves. The cafeteria's clock ticked in my ears, even from here. Each second a reminder. Someone, somewhere wasn't waiting. They were acting. I pressed the phone to my forehead, the cracked glass cool against my skin. What do you want from me? I whispered, not sure if I was asking my family, my brother, or the universe that handed me a child too small to hold without fear. The phone vibrated again, a final message for the night. She's not waiting for you. She's waiting for her chance. And just like that, silence in the hallway became unbearable. The silence cracked when a nurse touched my arm. She's stable tonight, she said softly, tilting her head toward the NICU window. Go home. Rest, even for a few hours. Home. The word again, sour on my tongue. I nodded anyway, though inside I was hollow. I rode the elevator down, each floor humming like a verdict. My reflection stared back in the mirrored doors. Split by the crack on my phone, I still clutched. One face, worn, mothering, desperate. The other, harder, colder, the woman my family was sculpting without permission. Outside, the air smelled like rain that hadn't yet fallen. I stood at the bus stop under a flickering street lamp, scrolling through my brother's messages. Don't trust Aunt Lila. She knows about the will. Hurry. Then another appeared. 3 words only. She's moving papers. I read it twice, my breath fogging the screen. Papers. Legal ones. Though it wasn't gossip, then it was currency. And they were already trading it without me. The bus arrived groaning, doors hissing open. Inside, I sank into a cracked vinyl seat, watching the city blur past. Neon signs, shuttered shops, a man cradling a bouquet at midnight. Life kept running its errands while mine was stalled between hospital walls and family betrayals. The phone buzzed again, this time a photo. Aunt Lila at my grandmother's oak dining table, the table where birthdays used to end in frosting fights. Papers spread across it now. My mother beside her, pen in hand, expression sharp as glass. I zoomed in. The document bore my grandmother's name, and below it a blank line waiting. A stranger on the bus glanced at me. I must have looked as though the ground had tilted. I closed my eyes, inhaled the scent of bus diesel and rain on asphalt, and thought, so this is what being erased looks like. Not loud, but neat. Signed in ink. The bus rattled on, each stop dragging me closer to the house I had run from. I remembered my brother's voice on the phone, frayed but urgent. If you don't come tonight, it might be too late. I whispered to the window, too late for who? For me or for her? The glass gave back only my split reflection. At the next stop, I stood, gripping the phone like a weapon, the crack across its screen glowing under the streetlight. The air outside was heavier, as though the storm had arrived early. And as I walked toward the house, one truth pressed itself against my ribs. Sometimes family doesn't steal your voice. They just sign your silence for you. The house rose out of the dark like a memory I never asked to see again. Porch light glowing, curtains drawn tight, the same chipped mailbox leaning left. My grandmother's house, or maybe not hers anymore. I stood at the gate, heart knocking harder than the storm clouds overhead. My phone buzzed once more. My brother. They're inside. Don't let them see fear. The cracked screen glared up at me, lightning splitting across its glass the way it did across the sky. I slipped it into my pocket and pushed the gate open. The hinges squealed like they remembered me. Through the living room window I saw them. Aunt Lila, pearls swinging as she bent over the table. My mother, her back straight, her pen poised like a dagger. A lawyer I didn't know, suit too crisp for midnight. Papers spread across the oak table like a feast no one invited me to. The smell hit before the sound. Coffee, strong and bitter, the fuel of decisions made in secret. I stepped onto the porch. My hand hovered over the door, then dropped into a fist. I knocked once, twice. The laughter inside cut short. A chair scraped back. Then the door swung open. Marin. My mother's voice carried no surprise, only irritation, like I was a child dragging mud into her clean kitchen. Shouldn't you be at the hospital? Her words were sharp, but her eyes flickered when they landed on me. Behind her, Aunt Lila smiled the way people do when they've already won. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But then my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I held it up, the crack across the screen catching the porch light. 74 missed calls. What's bad, Mom? The lawyer shifted in his seat, clearing his throat. Perhaps we should. No, my mother cut in, her palm snapping against the doorframe. This is family business. Family business. The same words they'd used when they left me out of birthdays, of holidays, of grief. The phrase that meant, you're in, but you're not equal. I stepped past her into the room. The oak table stood like an altar, my grandmother's handwriting faint on a folder edge. My daughter's name inked in a margin. Tiny, fragile, yet written. Something inside me unclenched. I looked at them and said, then let's conduct this business properly. The storm outside broke open, thunder rattling the glass. No one spoke, and in that silence I realized the fracture wasn't just in my phone screen. It was in this family, and tonight it was finally visible. The storm pressed its fists against the windows as if it wanted a seat at the table. My mother lowered herself back into her chair, lips tight. Aunt Lila stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking like a metronome of nerves. The lawyer avoided my eyes, shuffling papers that whispered betrayal in every turn. I stayed standing. My body refused to bend in this house. "You should have called," Mom said flatly, as if my arrival were a scheduling inconvenience. "You should have visited," I replied, voice even, though my pulse was anything but. Aunt Lila's smile stretched wider. "We didn't want to disturb you. You've had your hands full." Her glance slid toward the mention of the NICU, her tone coated in false pity. I ignored her. My focus locked on the folder in front of them. My grandmother's will, the object of their midnight devotion. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We were reviewing." "Rewriting," I cut in. Silence, except for the storm. Mom leaned forward, hands clasped as though in prayer. "Marin, you don't understand. Your grandmother left certain things in confusion. We're simply clarifying. For the good of everyone." "Everyone who?" I asked. Aunt Lila tapped the paper with a red fingernail. "The house, the accounts, the child's provision. These things need responsible hands." The child. They couldn't even say her name. My daughter, tethered upstairs by machines, reduced to a legal complication on their checklist. I pulled out my cracked phone, set it down on the oak table with a thud. The screen flickered, the fracture glowing under the chandelier's light. My brother called me 74 times. He seemed to think this wasn't clarification. He seemed to think it was theft. The lawyer shifted again. My mother's jaw flexed. Aunt Lila finally dropped her spoon. I pressed harder. "So which is it?" Thunder growled overhead, rattling the chandelier. In its glow, I noticed something I hadn't before. My grandmother's handwriting in the margins of the document. Small notes, arrows, her looping script. And there, beside my daughter's name, the words, "Ensure she is safe. Ensure she knows she belongs." The weight of those words steadied me. I lifted my eyes to them, my so-called family, and whispered, "She will." The lawyer's gaze flickered between us, sensing the fracture widening. And in that fragile pause, I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. It was about rewriting belonging, line by line, signature by signature. And I wasn't leaving without my daughter's place intact. The storm outside found its rhythm, rain pelting the windows like impatient fingers. Inside, the air thickened. Every breath dipped in old lemon polish and tension. My mother folded her hands, a church pose masking calculation. Aunt Lila leaned back, her pearls catching the chandelier light, smug as if the verdict had already been signed. The lawyer finally spoke. "Perhaps it would be best if we—" But I slid the folder closer, the papers whispering against wood. My cracked phone still glowed, faintly beside it, as if the fracture itself were listening. "You know what she wrote," I said quietly, my eyes tracing my grandmother's notes in the margins. "She wanted my daughter safe. She wanted her to belong." Aunt Lila gave a low laugh. "Marin, sentimentality doesn't keep lights on. You're drowning in hospital bills. Do you really think you can manage an estate?" I didn't answer her. I reached into my bag and pulled out another folder, the one I hadn't told them about. The hospital's social worker had slipped it to me a week earlier, sensing storms I hadn't yet named. Inside, copies of my grandmother's final directive, notarized and sealed. My trump card. The lawyer stiffened when he saw the stamp. "Where did you—" "She gave me a copy," I said, though the truth was Messier. My grandmother had pressed it into my hand the last time I visited her, whispering, "Keep this. They will try to make you small." I laid the document flat, its seal catching the light. My mother's face faltered. Aunt Lila's smile broke, just slightly like glass under strain. "She made sure her wishes couldn't be erased," I continued. My voice steadied, fueled by the storm hammering behind me. This house, the accounts, every line tied to her granddaughter, my daughter. Not negotiable, not for sale, not yours. The chandelier swayed with the thunder's growl. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my brother's voice cut in from the doorway. She's right. He was soaked through, rain dripping off his jacket, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked at me, then at them. You called it family business. Well, family's here now. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, tension pulling at his mouth. He tapped the notarized page. This changes things. Mom's chair scraped back violently. We'll contest it. But Aunt Lila didn't echo her. She just stared at me, eyes narrowing, her pearls no longer shining, just heavy around her neck. I felt the crack in my phone warm against my palm, like a scar reminding me. Fractures can become fault lines. And tonight, one had split open in this room. And for the first time, I wasn't the one breaking. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the air washed clean, the sky bruised but brighter. The oak table still held the papers like remnants of a battle, creases, spilled coffee, a line of ink left mid-signature. I stood at the window, holding my cracked phone in my hand, thumb tracing the fracture as though it were a map. Behind me, the lawyer quietly gathered his things, already acknowledging where the balance had shifted. Aunt Lila sat rigid, pearls twisted around her finger like a rosary she no longer believed in. My mother's voice finally broke the silence. You've embarrassed us, Marin, dragging in copies, turning this into a spectacle. Her tone was sharp, but her eyes carried something I hadn't seen in years, hesitation. I turned, steady. No, Mom, you embarrassed yourself. I asked for prayers, and you gave me vacation photos. I asked for presents, and you gave me silence. The only thing I'm dragging in is truth. For once, no one interrupted. My brother, still damp from the night, leaned against the doorway. It's done, he said simply. The seal is valid. The directive stands. He met my gaze with something almost like apology. She wanted your daughter to belong. And she does. The lawyer slid a fresh sheet toward me. A confirmation form, nothing more. I signed it without trembling. The pen felt heavy, but when it left the paper, something in me lightened. Aunt Lila finally spoke, her voice small, nothing like the woman who once drowned my pleas in beachside laughter. You still wear that perfume? She asked suddenly, eyes fixed not on me but on the air between us. A decoy, an attempt to recapture control. Yes, I answered plainly, because it lingers longer than false promises. I tucked my cracked phone into my bag. I didn't need to fix it anymore. The fracture had shifted meaning. It wasn't a flaw, but a record, proof of survival. I left them at that table, stormlight breaking across their stunned faces, and walked back into the morning. At the hospital, my daughter's chest rose and fell beneath her knitted cap. I whispered through the glass, you belong. You always will. And in that quiet moment, I understood revenge differently. It wasn't destruction. It was restoration. It was making sure that those who tried to erase you had to sit in the silence you no longer carried. If this ever happened to you, if family ever tried to sign away your worth, just say same in the comments.